Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Bob. If I could ask everyone to please take your seats, we'd like to get started with our program. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah Norville, and I am so proud to be standing here as part of the 10th anniversary celebration of the Double Helix Award for Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories. Congratulations, first and foremost, to this wonderful lab. When we started this event 10 years ago, I don't know that anybody really knew what to expect. But during the cocktail hour, I was so thrilled to hear one of our guests say, "This award is the equivalent of the Oscars for scientific achievement." And tonight we truly have three real stars that we are honoring this evening. This is the 10th anniversary, and I looked up on the internet what you're supposed to give for the 10th anniversary present, and it's tin and aluminum, and that's no fun. Or the modern thing is diamond jewelry, and sorry, Katie and Ann, there is no diamond jewelry coming your way tonight, but we have a beautiful golden double helix medal, which is far more precious than any of the other things that they typically give out for the 10th anniversary. Tonight we are recognizing three extraordinary individuals: David Botstein, Katie Couric, and Ann Wojcicki. Each one, in their own way, has dedicated their lives to science. Katie, of course, has brought public attention to the scourge of cancer, and as you'll hear in a few minutes, really opened people's eyes to what they can do to make a meaningful change in fighting this disease. Ann Wojcicki has let us all know that we all come from surprisingly similar sources back in our DNA, and we are now being empowered to use that information, which Jim Watson has stood on this very stage and talked about, as we learn how to sequence ourselves and use that information. And David Botstein has just pushed the barriers of scientific achievement in a way that has made the world, and more importantly, human health, so much more vibrant. Each has dedicated their lives to science, and we thank all three of our honorees and so many of you in this audience for being the pioneers that you are, dedicated advocates for biomedical research. And wow, what a 10 years it's been. We have celebrated research at Cold Spring Harbor Labs through the Double Helix Medal with unbelievable honorees, beginning first off with Muhammad Ali. Wow, what a night it was to have Ali up here on the stage being celebrated for what he had done to bring awareness to Parkinson's disease. And our honorees tonight join an illustrious group of leaders in research, advocacy, and philanthropy. 10 years is a really important milestone, but when you think about the history of Cold Spring Harbor Labs, it is just a blip in the history of this 125-year-old organization. In July of 1890, a group of pioneering scientists trekked to the shores of Cold Spring Harbor out in Long Island. And it was a trek. You think about how they had to get there back then. It was a course that they attended as part of the, what a horrible way to get there. It's bad enough on the LIRR. Can you imagine that horse and buggy to get all the way out to the labs? They were there to celebrate a summer science course for the Brooklyn Institute. And a gentleman by the name of John Devine Jones dedicated the land, which formerly housed his whaling enterprise, because that's what they did out in Cold Spring Harbor Labs, Cold Spring Harbor. And so isn't it appropriate tonight that we celebrate this whaling enterprise underneath the big giant blue well, which has seen so many glittering affairs here in New York. Of course, the water is still there, the little shack is gone, and what's replaced it on the shores is that beautiful home that Jim and Liz live in, and that beautiful double helix statue that reminds anyone who wanders by in their boat that this hillside is the entryway to a place where amazing science is taking place. 31 years. It was only 31 years after Charles Darwin wrote his amazing book and shook the world with the publication of the origin of the species that the foundation of the laboratory was born 30 years later. And since that time, Cold Spring Harbor Labs has evolved into a leading institution for biomedical research and education. And wow, what a leader it is. Over its 125-year history, 8 Nobel Prizes have been collected under the lab's belt. The Cold Spring Harbor Lab continues to tackle the most fundamental questions that are critical to life itself. And man, they seem to have a lot of fun when they're doing it. If you want to have a good time, hang out to the labs and just watch what these folks do up there. It's terrific. Cold Spring Harbor has unparalleled expertise in biomedical research that enables the lab to be well equipped to solve the most critical issues that we society face today. Diseases like cancer, like ALS, and autism that affect not only our families and loved ones, but also the families and loved ones of those talented and dedicated scientists at the labs. The lab's historic growth and exceptional achievements could not have happened without nurturing and support from you and our friends in the community. They say when you run into frustration, the most important thing you should do is remind yourself why you got started in the first place. And the person who is so talented at keeping the lab focused and reminding those brilliant scientists why they got into research in the first place is the phenomenal and fearless leader of Cold Spring Harbor Labs. Since 1994, Bruce Stillman has served as president of the labs. He has been steering Cold Spring Harbor Labs in new and exciting directions, and yet never forgetting the essence of what started the labs in the first place, and that is to delve into innovative new areas of research and science. I think the proof is in the pudding of what Cold Spring Harbor has done, and it has done so beautifully under the tutelage of Bruce Stillman. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our stage the president of Cold Spring Harbor Labs, Bruce Stillman.
Well, thank you, Deborah, particularly for all that you do for Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, supporting this event and being one of our great cheerleaders, so thank you very much. As we celebrate the 125th anniversary, I think it's appropriate that we do it in this museum that is devoted to evolutionary change and to comparative biology. We reflect on the amazing accomplishments that have occurred and the rich history of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, the first institution in the United States devoted solely to genetics, and genetics today remains part of our DNA. The early genetics research at Cold Spring Harbor was initiated and supported by Andrew Carnegie's Foundation. Today we have a very vibrant research and education programs that are having a broad impact on society and on science and society. And your support, just as Andrew Carnegie did, is making all of this possible. You are carrying on his legacy. And for that, I thank you for your support. We have achieved the status of one of the top research institutions in the world because we have a board of trustees who understands what Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory is about. They understand our culture, our vital role in scientific breakthroughs, and also, and most importantly, our science education programs that have an impact far beyond the shores of Cold Spring Harbor. The board is very actively led by their chairman, Jamie Nichols, who spends many hours challenging us to keep great. So please, Jamie, please stand on behalf of the board. I'd also like to recognize Marilyn and Jim Simons for their extraordinary contribution towards tonight, and also for all of the things they do for Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Thank you. I wish to thank tonight's dinner chairs, Jamie Nichols and Fran Biondi, Terry and Bob Lindsay, Julia and Yuri Milner, Eleanor and Howard Morgan, Lucy and Larry Page, Michelle and Michael Walrath, and Susan Wojcicki. As a result of the generosity of the chairs and all of you tonight, a record of $4.5 million has been raised for biomedical research and education at Cold Spring Harbor. Thank you. I wish to also congratulate tonight's honorees, Katie Couric, for her amazing contributions for making the public aware of cancer screening and for raising philanthropic funds through the support of cancer research through Stand Up to Cancer. To Anne Wojcicki for being a true pioneer in genetic medicine and public awareness and emboldening people to understand their own health and DNA. And to my friend David Botstein, one of the nation's top scientists, and most importantly, one of the nation's top science educators. We congratulate all of the honorees and look forward to hearing about them very soon. Molecular biology is helping address many of society's challenges, including the management of health, but also agriculture and the environment. But there is still much to do and still much to discover. The concentration of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories science on basic fundamental research is having a major impact on our research in cancer, in neuroscience, and in plant biology. Our increasing collaborations with clinical centers better positions us to tackle important health problems. And I am particularly enthusiastic about the Oncology Alliance that we formed this past spring with the North Shore LAJ Health System, the largest health system in the northeast of the United States. And I'm confident that this affiliation between Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and North Shore LAJ will be transformative for patients and their families. Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory is developing techniques and ideas that are providing food for an ever-increasing world population. Our scientists are understanding how the brain develops and how cognition works, and leads the world in understanding the genetics of cognitive dysfunction. In the future, we will increasingly focus our research not only on these areas, but also on metabolism, on nutrition, and on physiology that will help us maximize our quality of life. I'm proud to be a part of the remarkable history of this institution and to play a role in its future. Our storied history is chronicled in a very interesting book that was written by Jan Witalski, who's at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and Executive Director of our Banbury Center. And I hope you will take a copy of this book tonight called Road to Discovery, about the last 125 years of Cold Spring Harbor. Copies will be available when you leave. Working at the laboratory is like walking on the shoulders of giants. All of the pioneers of molecular biology have at some point in their career passed through Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. And although somewhat humbling by that past, it also drives our scientists to aspire to be one of the next Barbara McClintocks or Jim Watsons. One such motivated and very talented young scientist is Dr. Chris Vakish. Having spent time in pediatric cancer wards as a medical student, Chris saw firsthand how therapies of today are often ineffective. It inspired him to go into research, completing a PhD, and then I was fortunate to hire him straight out of graduate school as a Cold Spring Harbor Fellow in 2008. Chris made an immediate and profound impact on understanding how the expression of genes are inherited, but he used this basic science knowledge to great effect. He discovered a new target for an incurable form of pediatric and adult leukemia, leading to the development of a drug that is now in phase 2 clinical trials. For this work, Chris was awarded this year's American Association for Cancer Research Outstanding Investigator Award, a very prestigious prize. Please join me in welcoming Chris Vakish.
Thank you very much, Bruce. That was very generous. So I came to Cold Spring Harbor 7 years ago with my lovely wife, Camila Dos Santos, who is also a scientist. And what really led us to Cold Spring Harbor was a desire to train and learn molecular biology at one of the top institutions in the world for molecular biology. Today, Camila and I are each running independent cancer research laboratories within Cold Spring Harbor as members of the junior faculty. We also have the pleasure of living in an apartment on the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory campus, where we are raising our 2 sons, Lucas and Marcus. And if our sons knew we were in the whale room tonight without them, they would be totally heartbroken. Don't tell them you saw us here. But I can say that we are about, by virtue of living at the laboratory, we are about as immersed in the culture of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory as I think a family can possibly be. And it's really an incredible lifestyle that's very precious to us. It's really a privilege to both live and work with scientists that share the passion that we do for research and for understanding of basic biology and disease. But it's not without its consequences. And so on occasion, if you raise your kids at a laboratory, sometimes it leads to some funny ideas in their minds. So our kids have recently asked us when it will be their turn to have a laboratory at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, which is adorable. They can't read, they don't know how to use a toilet, but they want to run a lab. It's totally adorable. But kidding aside, before I introduce a video that highlights the unique things about Cold Spring Harbor, I just want to say one thing that's very near and dear to my heart when it comes to the lab, which is really the extraordinary tradition at Cold Spring Harbor of empowering young scientists to do big research. It is truly amazing if you look around the scientific community at the leaders of biology across the world today, at how many of those leaders had their big break while being a young scientist at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. The list is very long, it includes many people in the room, but I want to highlight one person that you all know, which is Bruce Stillman. And so Bruce was recruited to Cold Spring Harbor when he was 25 years old, straight out of his PhD by Jim Watson and Joe Sambrook. And upon coming here, started his own independent career. It won't surprise you when I say things went pretty well for Bruce when he came to Cold Spring Harbor. By the age of 30, he was already an accomplished and well-respected biochemist, had made seminal contributions to our understanding of DNA replication. 30 is a very young age to be a famous scientist, I'll say. Fast forward a few years, as president of Cold Spring Harbor, in addition to running a lab, in a research laboratory, Bruce works tirelessly to preserve these unique traditions that define Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, which includes supporting the ambitions of the next generation of young scientists, which includes my wife and I and all of the junior investigators of the lab. And it obviously goes without saying to say that one of the reasons these traditions of scientific excellence exist and have thrived at Cold Spring Harbor is because of philanthropic support of generous individuals and foundations. On behalf of all the scientists at Cold Spring Harbor, I just want to thank all of you in the room here tonight for sharing with us in a vision to understand biology and to alleviate the suffering of disease. We will now watch a video that will highlight, I think, many of the unique things about Cold Spring Harbor Lab.
Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory was founded in 1890 at an interesting time. It was founded on land that used to be a whaling village.
The big thing of the 19th century were Darwin's ideas and then the beginnings of teaching them through marine biology labs.
Soon thereafter, in 1900, when Mendel's laws of genetics were rediscovered, the laboratory took a major turn to become the first institution to focus solely on genetics. And this led the direction for the next 125 years.
And I think there's a fond spot for almost everybody in biology, certainly in molecular biology, for the lab. The modern molecular biology developed at Cold Spring Harbor. People have had some of the most enjoyable thought experiments walking the grounds here.
When you walk around the campus, visit scientists in their different labs, you can feel that spirit of enthusiasm, inspiration, excitement, and an eagerness to share knowledge.
Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory has made a major effort to start a new cancer therapeutics initiative that enables our scientists to take the research that they're doing far beyond what they would have normally done in the past. And this has also been facilitated by an extraordinary relationship that we've just started this year with the local and largest health system on the east coast of the United States, the North Shore LIJ Health System.
This affiliation allows Cold Spring Harbor Science to be discussed with clinical oncologists in the health system with the explicit intent of coming up with new treatments for cancer patients or new diagnostic approaches for cancer patients, including early detection.
Because of the dynamic nature of the faculty at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, we're constantly recruiting very bright young scientists. One of those newest young scientists is Dr. Camila Dos Santos.
We know for over 50 years now that an early age of pregnancy decreases the risk of breast cancer by 30 to 40%, and that includes all subtypes of breast cancer. So we are trying to look for factors present in cells after pregnancy that decrease the chance of cells to turn into cancer cells.
As a cancer survivor myself, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to scientists about cancer-related genes.
My ambition is to find new ways, new drugs, new therapeutic strategies that women can take at any age and decrease their risk of developing breast cancer.
One of the great examples of how a scientist can pick up on a completely new direction is Dr. Mike Wigler.
Mike Wigler has had a really transformative effect on the understanding of the genetics of diseases that aren't simple, most of all autism.
Up until then, pretty much people were looking at inherited mutations, and Mike suggested going the de novo route, and that has opened up a whole new way of looking at the autism incidence.
There's a lot of disease that's caused by new mutation. The kid has some disorder or disability that is not in either parent. There's no history in the family. And these children were not being studied, even though this was clearly a very rich area of genetics.
He believed that would be a meaningful cause of autism, and he turned out to be right on the button.
There's really no other place that I know of that has this combination of fantastic scientists on the campus, but also this convening ability to bring other groups here for some of the best meetings that occur anywhere in the world. Cold Spring Harbor has sort of placed themselves in the center of both great science and great education.
The broader educational programs at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, including our meetings and courses and the Banbury program, have a very big impact on science.
The most important part of Cold Spring Harbor education is scientists educating each other in effective ways. The way to really make progress is to get lots of smart people to focus on the same issues, and Cold Spring Harbor does all of that.
It is also the center for almost all of the top meetings throughout biology. So you can stay in one place and the world of biology comes to you, so to speak.
Right now, we're the guardians of this institution, and we want to build it, we want to help it continue in the future. It's made so much of a contribution.
The last 125 years of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory has really been the development and evolution of this extraordinary institution. For the next 125 years and beyond, what I think we really need to do is to become the center where the brightest minds and the best scientists in the world can come to work in a unique culture, and we can provide the resources
to enable them to do that science.
Cold Spring Harbor is an environment where you can go and have a walk with a couple of other scientists and hear things that you would never hear anywhere else and would change your life.
I can't think of a better message for you to hear before you begin your dinner. So enjoy your dinner and think about what wonderful people you are to celebrate and support this fantastic institution. We'll have more music from Bob Hardwick while we have our dinner, and we will honor our honorees in a few minutes. Enjoy. Hello again, everybody. I love the buzz in this room. It is so nice to see so many people so excited about Cold Spring Harbor Labs. And I know how excited you all are to be recognizing our 3 honorees tonight. I would like a show of hands. Please raise your hand if you have a sibling, a brother or sister. High in the air, we want to see. Okay. Please keep your hand, keep them in the air. Please keep your hand in the air if you ever fought with your brother or sister. All right, 2 hands. Okay, hands down. Tonight, we will not be witnessing sibling rivalry. We're going to be witnessing brotherly love. Our first honoree is going to be presented his introduction by his brother. And of course, our honorees are David Botstein, Katie Couric, and Ann Wojcicki. And so to introduce our first honoree is, I suspect, someone who, at an earlier time, fought tooth and nail with the man we are recognizing tonight, but he got over it. He is, however, just as extraordinary an individual as his brother is, whom he'll be presenting. Introducing our first honoree is a man who is renowned in his own right. He has served as the president of Bard College for over 4 decades. He is currently in his 24th year as musical director and principal conductor of the American Symphony Orchestra. How can so much brain power be in one family? And we are pleased to have with us for our first presentation, Dr. Leon Botstein. Dr. Botstein? You have to tell the people if you fought.
Thank you very much. I didn't really count on this as being a kind of a moment of true confessions. But I happen to think that fighting with your sibling is a form of affection which later in life can be transformed into real admiration. I'd hate to have a sibling with whom I didn't fight. There would be somehow a meaningless relationship. Why have a sibling? Why have more than one child except to teach them how to get along when it doesn't seem so intuitive to do so? But I am honored and delighted to be here this evening to celebrate an individual I've admired for as long as I can remember. The truth is, I can't remember a time when he wasn't in my life. And that's my only and older brother, David. David, all his life, has been driven by an idealistic curiosity and a deep passion for discovery. We knew that as children in a small apartment, and it was just evident from the earliest memory I have of him. He believes and has believed all his life in the significance and the vocation of basic and fundamental scientific research. In that sense, he's motivated by the ambition to understand nature better before any kind of practical application can be thought of. At the same time, he has worked to use the understanding that he finds to create new ways to combat disease and suffering. He's a great scientist. He's also a brilliant and inspiring teacher, as his many admiring colleagues and students over many generations will testify. David was an early proponent of the Human Genome Project, and all his scientific contributions reveal a conceptual brilliance and a consistent intellectual originality and courage. He's returned to Cold Spring Harbor again and again to share his research, to collaborate with colleagues, and to teach. Cold Spring Harbor has been an anchor as his career has taken him from Ann Arbor to Cambridge to Palo Alto to Princeton and now back to Silicon Valley. I credit much of his idealism about science and his love of science to our parents, both of whom were academic physicians. But he has really made all of us in the entire family unbelievably proud for both his commitment to humanity and his pursuit of knowledge. So it is with great honor and a sense of profound privilege to present tonight's first honoree, one of America's most distinguished scientific pioneers, my brother, David Botstein.
David Botstein is a force of nature.
Well, with David, you never have to wait for his opinion.
He's not shy about what he thinks.
David is very boisterous and energetic and enthusiastic.
And when David is an enthusiastic supporter, things happen.
I became interested in science relatively early in life.
He was always interested in understanding fundamentally how things worked.
One of David's huge impacts in the field was a series of studies to understand how genes interact with each other.
Nobody knew how any of that actually worked at the molecular level. And what we did was we provided a genetic way of identifying interactions between these different pieces so that we could get some idea of how it worked. Later, it turned out that some of the technology which we developed in the yeast system, where we could check everything, could be applied also to human cancers.
The most productive idea to come from David is the idea of nucleotide polymorphism.
These signposts, these polymorphisms as they're called, they were also the backbone on which the human genome sequence was first assembled.
Prior to that, there was no such thing as genomics, but this tool transformed everything.
As a result of David's genetic studies on physical mapping of genomes, there was a proposal to sequence the entire human genome. At a critical meeting in the symposium at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in 1986, Jim Watson brought a number of very prominent scientists together to discuss this, including David Botstein. But as a result of that meeting, David was asked to be on a committee.
David and I were members of the National Research Council's study to determine the feasibility of sequencing the Human Genome Project.
Well, the Human Genome Project, of course, was one of the greatest scientific accomplishments in the history of science, not just in the life sciences, but of all of sciences.
I suspect there are very few working biological and biomedical scientists who are not using DNA sequencing in some way to inform the questions they're asking about the natural world.
David Botstein is one of the great characters in science. He's an extraordinarily talented investigator and experimentalist. But I think one of the things that I admire the most about him is he is one of the most enthusiastic teachers of science that I know.
In his role as a teacher, he thought very carefully about what's wrong with traditional ways of doing things.
He has had a big impact from his days when he was a professor at MIT, to teaching courses at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, to the development of a whole new program at Genentech, and most interestingly, the development of an education program at Princeton University of integrative sciences.
I recently was writing a grant application where one of the questions was you had to state how you could differentiate yourself from your mentor. And instead, I ended up writing about how I hope that I'm still like David in a lot of respects, because I hope I bring that same rigor of thinking and engagement with students to my own mentoring relationships.
The enthusiasm, the idealism, the boundless energy, the imagination, the intensity of his engagement and his achievement is a source of real pride.
I think that if you were going to name, top 5 biologists by intelligence, David would be on that list for sure.
David is one of the greatest geneticists of the 20th century.
So, David, I'm supposed to ask you to come up.
How do you follow something like that? I'm honored, a little bit amazed, and grateful for this honor, especially as it comes from Cold Spring Harbor. Cold Spring Harbor played an absolutely central role in my education, and especially the maturation of my science. And I can think of no better way to illustrate that to you by going very briefly through all my interactions with Cold Spring Harbor from the beginning. When I was a graduate student, I used to go to the phage meetings. Phage meetings were originally started by Lurie and Delbruck in the 40s. And I got into biology as an undergraduate because I became interested in phage. And if you were interested in phage, you went to Cold Spring Harbor. So I did as a graduate student. And then I, for complicated reasons, moved to a different venue for graduate school, and I still went to Cold Spring Harbor. And then I finished my PhD, and I had an interesting result or two. And so what did I do with the interesting result or two? I went to Cold Spring Harbor and gave a talk at the phage meeting. This was very well received, and then I got a opportunity which not every graduate student has, which is within a year of my PhD, I was invited to the Cold Spring Harbor Symposium. Now, this had been going on for a very long time, and as has been said previously, was the central meeting for geneticists and then later molecular biologists since the beginning of the last century. And I showed up there, and I was introduced to and got to know at a peer level. Remember, I'm 1 year out of graduate school with all the leaders of the field. Only at Cold Spring Harbor. You can't do this anywhere else. So what happened then was that I went on with my career, and I kept coming back to Cold Spring Harbor. So I was at MIT. I did all kinds of interesting bacterial genetics, and this was all suitably reported. And I would go to Cold Spring Harbor every summer, of course with a stop at Ryan's Deli on the way, because from Boston to New York, you stop at Ryan's Deli. It's part of the tradition. And then I was invited to give the Advanced Bacterial Genetics course with my colleagues John Roth and Ron Davis, and published our first book, published, of course, by Cold Spring Harbor Press. And that book actually made nobody any money, but it had, as I've learned, a huge influence, because if you really want to know what to do in the lab, who do you ask? You ask Cold Spring Harbor. So in 1970, my mentors at MIT came to me and they said, you know, phage isn't going to last forever, and bacterial genetics isn't going to last forever. Boy, were they wrong. But nevertheless, what was I going to do? I had to look for something else, and so I got talked into taking the phage course at Cold Spring Harbor. The yeast course at Cold Spring Harbor. And sure enough, Jerry Fink and Fred Sherman collected a bunch of very senior people. Among the students was Frank Stahl, who was, an icon of molecular biology. And we started to work with yeast, and pretty soon we ended up as founders of a whole new field of eukaryotic molecular biology using this microorganism. And the first yeast meeting was in 1975 at Cold Spring Harbor, and we, did, everything the way it had been done before and is still being done at Cold Spring Harbor. When something new comes up, transposable elements, there's a meeting at Cold Spring Harbor where you get to meet everybody who is everybody. And when you think about teaching and learning, especially beyond your formal education, that's really important. If you propose to be a serious scientist, you have to keep up. And keeping up you can do with the literature by reading, but it's really better to supplement that with actually talking to the people who actually did all those things, and you learn things that you would not have learned otherwise, and you use them in your own research, and it makes things better. So I, in my career, moved from MIT to Genentech to Stanford and to Princeton, all great places, but during all that period, I had a strong connection with Cold Spring Harbor. I went to the meetings, I went to some of the courses, and I was actually on the board of trustees for quite a while. Finally, I should say that, as has already been thoroughly covered actually by the video, the beginning of the Genome Project really started at the 1986 Cold Spring Harbor Symposium, where all those pictures of me arguing with Wally Gilbert and so forth and so on come from. And that discussion led Jim Watson to organize, by methods that I still don't completely understand, a National Research Council study of whether or not one should do this thing in the late 1980s, and that Shirley Tillman was also a member of. And out of that came the compromise that produced the money that produced the genome. And of course, the rest is, I think, quite clear to everyone, and I don't have to go through it again. So again, let me thank Cold Spring Harbor, above all, for the maturation of my education. I would be half the scientist that I turned out to be, however much that is, had it not been for a place like Cold Spring Harbor. And my time on the trustees was greatly reassuring that we are continuing in that tradition, that the meetings are vibrant, that the courses are still state-of-the-art, and that other scientists can follow and have the same profit from the association that I had. And thank you again for the honor. Everything has to come with a picture.
Hold the box open. Hold the box open.
Hold the open box minus notes. Okay. I can't get it open. There's a button. So which way does the button go?
It's like...
there we go. Okay. Here we go. All right. Thank you.
Not bad for someone who came to this country at the age of 7. Congratulations, David. And we are now going to take a little break. We have 2 dynamic women who will be up here shortly, but what's standing between you and Anne and Katie is your dessert. So we'll have dessert, and then we'll have our wonderful next duo of honorees. Oh, that proves I'm a mother. I know how to do that. I'd invite you all, please, to take your seats, because we have two very special women who are going to be up here on the stage in a moment. I realized during dinner there is a theme tonight, and Bruce, I don't think that this was meant to be, but the theme tonight is family. We've just seen two brothers share the stage, one who has always looked up to his older brother, and the entire scientific community looks up to him as well. Our next honoree stumbled into the field for which she's being honored tonight because of family, and you're going to hear more about that. Our next honoree is going to be introduced by Dr. Mark Pochapin. Mark is a gastroenterologist over at NYU Langone Medical Center. There, he is also the Vice Chair for Clinical Affairs and the Director of Gastroenterology in the Department of Medicine. In his clinical practice, he primarily is focusing on the prevention, the detection, and the diagnosis of gastrointestinal cancers, which is exactly what brought our next honoree into this world of fighting cancer. A longtime friend of Katie's. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Mark Pochapin. Mark?
Thank you all so much. It's such an honor to be here. Cold Spring Harbor has always been something I've admired as both a physician and also a budding researcher. It's really special to be here for multiple reasons because as a physician at NYU Langone Medical Center, we're constantly looking for the next thing to do to try and treat cancer. And as you know, cancer is so many different diseases. And looking at the genetic basis and seeing what Cold Spring Harbor and the research that's coming from here is capable of doing is literally transforming humankind. And I feel so honored to be here with you tonight. So when I think of my friend Katie Couric, a well-known quote by Margaret Mead comes to mind. She said, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have." And Katie lives this quote because she literally on a daily basis is making a difference for people who don't even know the type of disease that they might get, which affected her lives and the lives of so many. You see, I met Katie really under the most dire of circumstances. In 1998, I diagnosed her husband, Jay Monahan, with colorectal cancer. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget telling Jay and Katie the diagnosis. And unfortunately, 9 months later, Jay passed away from the disease. And he left two little girls and a wife and a family behind. Jay was only 42 years old. It was literally at Jay's wake when Katie came up to the physicians there and said, "You have to do something about this horrible disease." And we looked at her and she knew. We said, "Katie, you probably could do more for this disease than any physician because we think we could prevent this through screening." And she says, "I'm going to do something about this. I can't let other families suffer what my girls and I have been suffering with Jay's illness and his death." So within 2 months, Katie came to our office. She came with producers and television monitors and TVs, and she started filming what was to be the first "How do we prevent colorectal cancer?" And we talked about the need to get a colonoscopy. But it was in 2000 when Katie really brought a television camera where no camera's really gone before. And that was her colon. And Katie had an on-air colonoscopy, an act of bravery, literally an act of bravery, that resulted in an unprecedented and scientifically documented 20% increase in screening colonoscopies almost overnight. We talk about scientific research. The graph just doesn't go up here. The graph actually breaks from where Katie actually had her colonoscopy. And by the way, it continues today. It's a continued effect. But her involvement did not stop there. She went on to co-found the Entertainment Industry Foundation's National Colorectal Cancer Research Alliance, the Jay Monahan Center for Gastrointestinal Health with myself and colleagues at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell, and the Emily Couric Clinical Cancer Center at the University of Virginia in honor of her sister who died of pancreatic cancer. In 2008, she joined up with the EIF and 10 colleagues to co-found Stand Up to Cancer. I'm sure you've all have been involved in some way with Stand Up to Cancer, To date, more than $360 million have been pledged to stand up and support the acceleration of cancer research, an incredible number. You see, Katie's efforts as an advocate for cancer screening, prevention, research were born from one motivation and one motivation only, so that others would not have to suffer what she and her family endured with Jay's illness and his death. And she's a mother, a wife, a friend, and so much more. But in this instance, she's someone who wants to make sure that others do not have the same type of suffering. And she does it every day. Really, it's been 17 years, hard to believe, Katie, 17 years since Jay died, and her efforts have been sustained both on and off the camera. She has saved more lives than we or she could ever have imagined. And in those ways, in truly the way that we started with Margaret Mead's quote, Katie Couric has truly changed the world. So it's really an honor to watch the video.
When my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in 1997, my world fell apart. During his 9-month battle, I learned a lot about cancer, about treatment, diagnosis, prevention. And after Jay passed away, I decided I needed to educate people about the second leading cancer killer of men and women in this country, which is colon cancer. I did an on-air colonoscopy shortly after Jay died, and it wasn't because I thought people would be fascinated by my colon. It was because so many people don't get screened for colon cancer. And I thought if I could destigmatize the procedure, it would make more people willing to undergo it.
I mean, the fact that I had a colonoscopy was because of Katie.
Sure enough, there was a 20% increase in colonoscopies after I did that. And they called it the Couric effect at the University of Michigan. And I thought, wow, you know, that's amazing to be able to have an impact. I started the National Colorectal Cancer Research Alliance in the year 2000 to inform people and to raise badly needed research dollars. We don't have Jay, but I think we have something wonderful that will live on in his memory.
What she's done has had an impact now on millions of lives and has really been a tremendous tribute to her late husband and really a great gift to us all. I mean, it's truly staggering what she's done.
I felt that I wanted to do something about this disease in general. So a group of assertive, crazy women got together and said, let's do something about cancer.
Katie Couric got together with some of her colleagues and friends. They decided to take it on themselves to go to the scientists, to go to the clinicians, and to touch the many patients that they knew, to come up with a new formula for how progress in cancer treatment could be much faster. Stand Up to Cancer has funded 4 dream teams now in pancreatic cancer. We need to change our approach to this disease. We're starting with understanding the fundamental science behind pancreatic cancer, which we know a lot about. The science has told us that we need totally new therapies. So we're designing those new therapies, and we're seeing some positive results from the early efforts. What Katie has done for just the awareness around cancer prevention, cancer treatment, the concept that we're not going to put up with another 10, 20, 30 years of pure research, that effort that she's placed into this is unbelievable.
It's my great honor. Katie, please come up to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Despite the fact that I have never felt so intellectually and academically inadequate, I am really, really happy to be here tonight. Just consider me the EQ portion of a very high IQ program. I just want to first and foremost thank Mark Pochapin for being here. You know, I think when you look up bedside manner in the dictionary, there should be a picture of Mark. His compassion, dedication, and refusal to give up hope sustained Jay and me and our respective families during those very dark and terrifying months, and for that, I will be forever grateful. You know, as you heard, it's been almost 18 years, believe it or not, since my husband died, and almost 17 since I became an advocate for colon cancer research and awareness. And it is tremendously gratifying that my work continues to make a difference somehow so many years later. In fact, I was having lunch with a friend on Saturday in a restaurant in my neighborhood. Just 2 days ago, having lunch, when I was approached by a woman about my age. Last week, she was diagnosed with colon cancer, she told me. She's having surgery on Tuesday, yes, tomorrow. And in the Small World department, her treatment is being coordinated by none other than the Jay Monahan Center at New York Presbyterian Hospital. She's waiting on pins and needles, literally, to find out whether she'll need chemo. She said she hated to interrupt me, but she just couldn't believe we were in the same restaurant, and she wanted to thank me. She said she was screened because of my efforts. She was crying just a little bit as her 2 daughters, who looked to be about my daughter's ages, were waiting shyly by a booth nearby. Enjoying a soup and sandwich on a Saturday afternoon, $18. Hey, this is New York after all. Having someone like that approach me and tell me getting screened may have very well saved her life, well, that's priceless. Trying to spare families the pain and loss of those like my husband Jay and my sister Emily, who died of pancreatic cancer 14 years ago, has become my personal mission. And I know it's critically important. It's a critically important part of your mission at Cold Spring Harbor as well. I'm honored that we have already worked together. Bruce Stillman, thank you for helping select the members of one of our dream teams focusing on pancreatic cancer. Dr. David Tuvison, thank you so much for participating and thank you for being part of Stand Up to Cancer Scientific Advisory Committee, the heart, soul, and driving force behind our work. And we've had key members of 2 Stand Up to Cancer Dream Teams from Cold Spring Harbor, Dr. Greg Hannon on our breast cancer team, and Dr. Doug Fearon on a team bringing the promise of immunotherapy to patients with pancreatic cancer. Stand Up is so lucky to have you all. And we're all so lucky to be living in a time when genetic research is more critical and more promising than ever, not just for cancer, but for a host of devastating diseases. We're beginning to understand how genes behave and how to potentially alter and manipulate them to prevent and treat what for decades was seen as a preordained and inevitable fate that leave a legacy of heartbreak and a trail of tears. Cold Spring Harbor has been at the forefront of this research, leading the way since 1904 with the establishment of the Carnegie Institute's Station for Experimental Evolution, later renamed the Department of Genetics. See, everyone, I did my homework. But seriously, what Apple is to computers, Cold Spring Harbor is to medical research. Many of Stand Up to Cancer's dream teams are taking advantage of our still growing understanding of genetics. And we're just now seeing the genesis of a whole new generation of therapies. I don't know about you, but I'm really loving those words that start with GEN. We're taking tumor cells from patients and we're growing them in the lab to create so-called tumor organoids, which have the potential to rock the future of cancer treatment. Imagine the possibilities of replacing the let's throw something against the wall and see if it sticks approach that has characterized the course of treatment for too many patients with cancer for too long with something so much better and so much more effective. And think of the doors this opens when it comes to developing even more novel approaches with even better outcomes. It's almost enough to make me do a little happy dance up here. Scientists here tonight at Stand Up to Cancer and at research institutions all over the world are, in my view, society's unsung heroes. It is thrilling to witness the explosion of knowledge that's taking place and how it's helping so many of you help so many others. I am in awe, genuinely in awe, of what you do each and every day. It's an incredible privilege to do my small part that in some way contributes to the work of such a brilliant and dedicated community. This honor really does mean the world to me, and I hope it honors all those who refuse to give up the fight. So thank you all. Thank you to my husband, John, who's helped me rediscover joy. And thank you again for this wonderful award. Sorry, awkward photo op. Thank you.
Congratulations, Katie, and thank you so much. Wow, you are a rock star in so many ways. There is another rock star here. There are a lot of rock stars here. There's so many talented people who have done so much. But when you think about the genesis of much of the research that we talk about and the idea of the DNA double helix, it all started with two young scientists working in a laboratory in England. And it is such a thrill for Carl and me to be able to say that we are friends with Jim and Liz. Liz knows I've had a crush on this man since the day I met him, and she's cool with it, so we're good. But the scientific world has had a crush on Jim Watson a lot longer than I have. A man who at the age of 24, do the math, there's no one that young in this room, co-discovered with Francis Crick the DNA double helix back in 1953. We had a Christmas party a few years ago. Jim and Liz were there. He had this extraordinary overcoat, and I was helping him with this coat. I said, my God, that's a handsome coat. And he said, yes, I first wore it when I went to Stockholm to accept my Nobel Prize. And he said, I'll be wearing it next week when I'm there for the 50th anniversary. Are we lucky or what to have this man in our midst? But for Jim Watson, that was just the warm-up act. That was 1953. 2 decades ago, Jim played a key role in something we heard about, David, just a few moments ago from you, in the launch of the Human Genome Project, ushering in a new era of targeted molecular therapy, something, Katie, your team is working so diligently to forward. 10 years ago, those of you who were here at our very first Double Helix dinner, remember Jim standing at this podium and speaking alluringly of meeting someone, looking at them, and saying, I'd like to sequence you. How cool is that? And it was so sexy the way he said it that I think people came to a scientific dinner and thought, whoa, these are way more fun than I ever imagined. And the latest chapter in this unbelievably great American story is Jim's passion to find the cure and new ways to battle cancer. His leadership and his discoveries have already impacted our world more than we can ever describe, but we know they will continue to impact the world to come. And newsflash, folks, I was speaking with Jim before we sat down to dinner, and he said, I'm working on something, and I'm really excited about it, and I don't think it's going to get me a Nobel, but it's really good. A man whose mind has never stopped working and who is truly an American treasure. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Jim Watson.
So I'm up here now to introduce Ann Wojcicki, who's founded a company called 23andMe. There are 23 chromosomes, and then if you're me, you've got a Y chromosome, so 24. And so we're in a sort of America's rather ambivalent about it. I sort of believe that DNA is really very important, and then there are other people who believe that and DNA has some role in yeast, that David Botstein studies, but everything in human depends on our opportunity to get into Harvard. But I don't really think that's really what determines your life. Anyways, when Francis Crick and I discovered the double helical structure of DNA, we knew it would change the way we think about life. We knew, instantly we get a Nobel Prize, but we had no idea what would, happen. We never even thought we could find the genetic code, or that we could cut and paste DNA, or now that we might actually be able to genetically engineer people without awful genetic diseases. So I am much more famous than I was when we made the discovery. But it's only because DNA is really, I think, correctly dominates our lives. And, our lives will be governed what's in our DNA. It's not in my script, but I'll say my actual current real interest is how DNA makes us social. Why are human beings good people? And the usual answer is from God. But I think it goes the other way around. I think our genes, and we know this from higher mammals, makes us altruistic. And it doesn't mean we're always altruistic, but it means that you can sort of have faith that you can go through the day and you're going to be able to work with people, and they're going to try and help you, and you're going to try and help them. So you sort of look forward to life. Actually, I do. But it's all faith in that our genetic instructions have made us good, not bad. That doesn't mean there's not evil people. You get strains of rats, which have lost altruism. And I'm sure there are some people, I don't want to say they're within this room, that have lost the gene for altruism. And so they'll take advantage of us. And, but for the most part, and I think our genes make us good. And so I just want to find out as much as possible what's in our DNA. And here's where Ann Wojcicki comes in. She started the company with the name 23andMe, which recognizes the importance of DNA in our lives and the impact it will have with us. Through founding 23andMe, Ann empowers individuals with access to their own genetic information and drives discoveries by generating large sets of personalized data for commercial and academic use. 23andMe is facilitating important research into human health and will continue to push its boundaries into personal genomics. So Ann likes DNA, I like DNA, and I think we should really like DNA. Not that it doesn't, the instructions can get messed up and then we have terrible diseases like colon cancer and down the line. But for the most part, I think we should look at DNA, which gives order to our lives. And knowledge is wonderful, and I think just the more we know about what our DNA is, we'll, look forward more to the future. So I'm a big supporter of 23andMe.
I did the 23andMe spit test as one of the first people to ever do it. I had no idea what I was going to get, but then I got my results and I thought, wow, this is really amazing.
I was really interested in seeing what my genome sequence looked like, so I sent mine off early on. And I think a lot of people would also love to see how their genomes tell them about themselves.
Anne strongly believes that each individual has the right to know his own genome.
Since I was a child, I have loved researching about my body. And in 4th grade, I did a report about junk food. And ever since then, I've been interested in nature and nurture in my environment and my DNA. When I saw the human genome being sequenced, I knew right away that there was something substantial to do with that. And when I got to know the healthcare industry and I realized how much consumers don't have a critical role in it, I knew that there was a combination of the consumers actually taking charge of their own healthcare, and they're going to do that through their genome. 23andMe was born out of the idea that the consumer can actually engage in their own health and actually drive a revolution where healthcare is no longer about this episodic visit to your physician once a year, but it's about the continuous engagement of you being proactive about your own healthcare and having a partnership with the medical world rather than just being solely reliant on it.
No, I think it's really fantastic that this company, 23andMe, has really taken genomic science into the general public and made it something that we're all talking about and that we all have access to.
If you know what you're at risk for, you can potentially take actions to prevent developing one of those conditions or to actually proactively manage your life.
When you sequence a genome, what you get is data about you. And to comb through all of that data looking for the important pieces takes a lot of computational power. The research in my lab is really focused on trying to understand how our genomes and our genes are controlled such that we use the right genes at the right time and we silence the ones that aren't supposed to be used. And in particular, the silencing processes that I study are all about silencing these viral-like sequences that exist within our genome and that might be contributing to diseases like ALS.
Frankly, the reason why I wake up every morning is because of the customer stories. And when I get a story about somebody who says, I have 3 small children, and because of you, I know I have BRCA, and I just, was able to prevent developing breast cancer like all the other women in my family, I mean, it's heart-wrenching and it's beautiful.
I've just been impressed to see how Anne is really dedicated to the field and really dedicated to science and to making a difference to the world.
Anne is, alongside with Sergey Brin, is a co-founder of the Breakthrough Prize in Life Sciences.
So the Breakthrough Prize is super exciting. It was really the ideas and the brains of Yuri Milner, where he had this vision of making scientists, great scientists, into celebrities.
The founders of the prize believe that intellectual achievements in our world are underappreciated. The brightest minds who pursue the biggest questions should be celebrated.
I think Anne's making a big difference in the world by doing something that no one has ever done before.
Anne is a very creative thinker and a leader who is paving the way in a developing area of consumer genomics.
When I think back on the last 9.5 years, it has not been easy, but it's incredibly rewarding because I think what we're doing makes a difference.
And Jim will now present the double helix to Anne Wojcicki.
Wow, what an honor.
Not just because we're all dining under a giant whale, which I sent a picture to my children. My children were very concerned why they weren't invited because it was such an awesome scenery here. And then next, because my sister said really nice things about me in public. And in a family where we have 3 very competitive girls, that's a huge honor. But mostly really because 23andMe is entirely based on the work, obviously, of Watson, of Jim Watson, and of Cold Spring Harbor, and all the work that has been laid out by this scientific community. We could not do what we do today if it hadn't been for this entire team and everything that you have done. So when I think about 23andMe, I think about what we do as being the liaison between the researchers and all of us. And I've always had this idea. My father is a particle physicist, and he was part of something called the Superconducting Supercollider. And it was something that was going in the 90s, and I watched the Superconducting Supercollider get all this funding, but then get killed in 1992. And I think that one of the reasons why it got killed is because people didn't understand what the importance of the physics work was. And it was something that always stuck in my mind, that if you can't communicate what you're doing scientifically, people are not going to adopt it. And so the goal of 23andMe, when I saw the genome being sequenced, I took a course in 1992 about the genome and how it was potentially going to be sequenced. And then when I saw it actually being sequenced, and I got so excited when I was on Wall Street, and so excited that this was coming, and there's all these reports I was saving about the genomics and the coming revolution, and then 6 years later, there was still no real progress. And so I had learned from my mother. My mother is here and is an incredible patient advocate. She's one of those people who has driven me to understand how much you have to advocate for your own health. That if you want to have the best health and you want to actually really be as healthy as possible, you have to take charge of yourself. And so I decided that 23andMe needed to be born so that we could actually take control of this genetics revolution. That the consumer actually doesn't really have much of a voice in healthcare, and the consumer doesn't have much of a voice in research. And that if we want to actually recognize the true potential of the genome and of research, then we all actually need to be engaged in it. That we all need to be participating, we all need our genome, and that we all need to understand it. And I was so upset. A few weeks ago I was in the UK, and there was this, or actually a few years ago in the UK, and there was this movement where people who were saying, I don't want to eat food with DNA. And I was like, well, rocks don't go very far. And so you realize like there's this massive leap where we need to understand. And in part, when I think about sort of the issues about what goes from sort of, all these scientific discoveries today into where it actually really gets adopted, it's a lot about education and understanding. And that all the work that Cold Spring Harbor is doing and all the work that all these geneticists and scientists around the world are doing are sort of meaningless if society is scared of them. And so it's one of the things that 23andMe is really focused on is empowering the consumer. We have over 1 million people today who have been genotyped and who are actively participating. And that if we want to actually really change the world of the science and we want to really adopt these new technologies quickly, then we all need to be educated about it. And so I've learned over the last 10 years just how much all of us who don't have PhDs, someone like Katie, you said you had the high EQ, but you're actually a scientist here. You're leading the charge, that we're all scientists, and that you actually can really be participating. And we've learned this over the last 10 years, how much people, the average individual, can actually understand and learn about their genome. And not only that they can understand and learn about it, but they want to be connected more and more to the research. They want to understand what is the research that's actually happening at Cold Spring Harbor. They want to understand what are all the latest discoveries that are coming out. So that it's our obligation then to actually make sure that they are engaged. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the work that has come, that all the scientists that are making these discoveries, because it enables me to then empower my customers to keep learning. And I think that hopefully with 23andMe, with the database that we are amassing and all of the genetic information that we have, the million people that we have and all the data that we're collecting about this, that we're actually then going to be able to contribute back ourselves. And that we're going to be able to partner with groups like Cold Spring Harbor and others and actually be able to make sure that we can help accelerate the genetics research and those new discoveries. So I want to just leave with one note, and that is to encourage all of you to not just be philanthropically involved and not just actually be supporting it, but to actually be involved with your own science. See yourself as scientists. Get access to your own genome. Get access to your medical record. Ask lots of questions. Be an advocate for yourself. And by doing all of those things, you're not just going to be actually learning about yourselves, but you're going to be able to contribute back. And that the more that we understand science and the more that that spreads, we'll be influencing the next generation of children who are actually going to then really appreciate the science, and they're going to get even more involved. So thank you so much for this award. Thank you so much for making 23andMe feasible.
Wow, what a night. And if you think about it, all three of our honorees began their mission with one very simple question. How come? How come people aren't in charge of their own medical information and taking advantage of what is their rightful property and using it to make decisions? How come people are being diagnosed with cancer and aren't taking the steps that they could take to try to prevent it? And how come there aren't more gifted scientists stepping forward into the laboratory and taking advantage of this unbelievable body of knowledge? Thanks to David Botstein, scientists, it's like a ripple. When you were talking, David, I thought about a stone going into a pond. And with each student that you've come into contact with, your expertise and your enthusiasm has just rippled out. And the countless number of researchers who are out there changing the world because of you, it is amazing. What an incredible honoree. Katie, as we all know, this journey was not one that you ever chose, but we know it is one that was thrust upon you, and yet you rose to the challenge of losing first your husband and then later your sister, and making it your mission that other families wouldn't go through that heartbreak. There are still families that do experience that, but there are far fewer thanks to the hundreds of millions of dollars and the unbelievable awareness that you've raised. So bless you and thank you for what you have done. And Anne, thank you for being a warrior princess, reminding all of us that we do own our bodies, we do own the information it contains, and we can be our own advocates when armed with information, because as we all know, information is power. And so much of the information that we are all focusing on and working on started in that laboratory 50+ years ago. And so, Jim, we will always be forever in your debt for the research and the enthusiasm and the joy that you have brought to the scientific community. And finally, to you, Bruce Stillman, and your team at Cold Spring Harbor, we are so grateful for the work that you do. We hope that nights like this allow you scientists who are here with us to experience a little bit of joy, a little bit of a release from the sometimes tedious work you do. And I hope know that there is a whole big world out there that is incredibly grateful for the knowledge that you are sharing with us and the changes that will be the result of that. So thank you to the scientific community. And last but not least, thanks to all of you. $4.5 million is a jaw-dropping sum of money. And as I think you will leave tonight, you know that those funds will be put to their highest purpose as the lab continues the mission that started 125 years ago when those poor folks came by horse and buggy to a desolate place on Long Island. It is no longer desolate. The transportation is a lot better. The mission hasn't changed. It is to use science to its highest power and to better the human experience. So thanks to all of you for making that possible, and here's to another 125 years of Cold Spring Harbor Labs. Thank you so much, everybody, and good night.